Hello, King Lions. Today in Language Arts, we're talking about sequencing. And before we talk about the skill of sequencing, I want you to think about why we study sequencing. How does it help us understand a story better? So after you think about that, we're going to talk about what you do. I've posted this graphic organizer to our class website. There's nothing magical about this particular one. It is important that you get used to seeing this flowchart. This format has been released by the Department of Education as something you may or may not see on an SOL one day. But it is in the released items. So we're going to talk about how to use this. One thing I like about this is that it forces you to look at the most important events in the story and kind of separate out the details from the big events. So we're going to use that with this. I'm posting some sequencing reading passages to our class page. We were going to do these in class last week and it was going to be super fun. So what you're going to do is you are going to look at the passages, and then at the bottom of each there's a series of events that happened in the story. So as you can see, I've cut mine apart. What you can do if you have a child who maybe doesn't like to write so much is you can look at the flowchart or draw a flowchart and simply glue or place the sentences in the order that they happened in the story. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of finding your text evidence. So we're reading the story, even though this is a simpler story, it's a good one to practice that skill of finding the evidence in the text. So going back and finding where did each of these things happen, and then manipulating the sentences in the right order instead of just numbering them. To me, that makes more sense than looking at numbers out of order. I would rather retell a story by actually cutting the sentences and putting them in order, so that whatever works for you, and then you can practice retelling or summarizing the story with just the important events. So sequencing helps us to summarize a story because it helps us to think about the big events in order. We can apply that to our writing when we're writing a story and using first, next, then, finally. It helps us to look at the big idea and then what are the supporting details. Another thing you can do with this is to take your graphic organizer and put the events in order, skipping an event, and then having your child go back and find which of the events happened here. So what happened after this and before this. Some of the passages are more complicated. Some of them have more steps. This one only has 5. Some of them have 8. So you decide what is right for you, and practice some sequencing, and then you can apply it to your writing, and I'd love to read your stories. And you can also apply it to other reading that you're doing just on your own. So this is sequencing. Have fun.